From finally getting a chance to settle their feud to the lack of contenders for the champ at middleweight, here's why Israel Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis needs to happen. These two men want more than anything to kill each other in the octagon, and they're not afraid to speak up about it. The whole thing started when Stillknox claimed that there had been no real African champions, because the belt had never even been on the continent. He added that he'll be the first true African son to bring the UFC title home, and that the so-called Three Kings chose to adopt first world countries as their new home.
Well, I mean, did those belts ever go to Africa? As far as I know, it came to America and New Zealand. I'm going to take a belt to Africa. I'm the African fighter in the UFC.
Dricus claimed to be the real African athlete because he still lived on the continent and even trained out of it. This was a mistake on his part because it started a whole debate on race and heritage, and things rapidly spun out of his control. People started berating him for making such comments, and even some of the African fans turned on him. Du Plessis didn't expect it to go down this way, and he tried fixing it by saying that he'll be the first champion that resides in Africa, and that he never questioned the heritage of Izzy, Francis Ngannou, or Kamaru Usman. But the damage had already been done, and the last stylebender wasn't gonna let go of this. The middleweight champ was very offended, promising the fans that he was gonna drag Du Plessis' carcass through Africa. According to Izzy, Dricus didn't have to make things ugly to get a title shot. He would have gotten his chance regardless of that. This was just disrespectful to the guys who sacrificed so much to get to the top and paved the way for fighters like Du Plessis. Adesanya even approached Dana White and asked him to throw Stillknox against him directly, because he just couldn't wait to get his hands on the guy. Over the next few months, the rivalry boiled up even further, since Izzy started targeting the newest contender at middleweight, and Dricus responded in kind while making sure he didn't say anything inappropriate. Obviously, the South African couldn't match Adesanya's level in trash talk, because the issue is already pretty sensitive, and the color of his skin would have just worked against him. I bet Dana would have considered making a fight between them immediately, but he probably thought better of it, and threw Dricus against Robert Whittaker. Even though he'd been impressive in his unbeaten streak in the UFC so far, everyone thought that was the end of Dricus, because there's no way he could beat the Reaper in the octagon. Rob had only ever lost to Adesanya in the middleweight division and has proven himself to be a cut above the rest. He showed improvements in his game with each passing fight and was declared as a massive favorite against Dricus, but Stillknox proved that he was a serious challenger to Izzy's crown. He fought Bobby Knuckles at UFC 290 and managed to silence his doubters with an amazing performance. The fight was close in the beginning, the two men choosing to stay on their feet. Rob's striking is phenomenal, as you guys know, and it was only a matter of time before he started running away on the scorecards. Dricus connected with a meaty right hand on Whittaker's chin, which dropped the former champ. From there, it was easy for the South African to follow up with a flurry of punches to seal the deal and establish himself as the rightful #1 contender in the division. But then things got ugly as Dana decided to bring Izzy into the octagon. The two men engaged in a verbal spat in the center of the cage, with Adesanya spewing racial slurs and dropping N-bombs at Dricus.
This is my African brother right here. Let's go. What's up? Let's go. Yeah. What's up?
Not gonna lie to you guys, it didn't look like the stylebender was being himself. I mean, sure, he was angry at his African brother, as he called it, but it was also kinda cringe. Izzy clarified that it was Dricus who started it, but he's gonna finish it for good, claiming he doesn't need a DNA test to prove where he's from, unlike Stillknox, and that he was gonna expose Dricus as the pretender that he is. The South African didn't say much in the exchange, with the most notable thing being him setting the record straight that he was an African, but he was no brother of Adesanya's.
I'm African, but I ain't no brother of yours, son.
While some people criticize Dricus for not speaking up more, you really can't blame him. The guy secured an empathetic win over one of the greatest fighters on the roster, and he had a right to celebrate with his team without Izzy's shadow hanging over his head. But he did speak his mind during the post-fight press conference, because according to Dricus, the last stylebender was acting like a clown and wasn't behaving as a champion should. He also added that Izzy probably sees him as the true champion, because usually it's the challenger who goes into the octagon for a face-off. This kind of thing may sell tickets for Adesanya, but Dricus promised to do that in his own way, and that's by being a true gentleman in the sport. People look up to the UFC champs, and acting out the way Izzy did isn't a good look on him. Dricus thinks that he's just setting a bad example for the younger audience. and that he should learn to conduct himself properly inside and outside the octagon. This is something that most fans agree with, and even Chael Sonnen admitted that Adesanya lost his mind during the stare-down. Dana made it clear that he doesn't give a crap about what Izzy said, and knowing the UFC boss, he was probably happy with how things played out, since it'll allow him to hype up the upcoming fight even more. The win over Whitaker completely changed the outlook that fans had on Dricus, and even his most staunch doubters are considering him a serious threat to Izzy. Don't get me wrong here, guys. The last stylebender's still the clear favorite between these two, but Du Plessis has proven that he's gonna make the champ sweat for it. While talking to the media, Dricus predicted that he was gonna knock Izzy out as he did with Rob, and that it wouldn't even be a fight if it went to the ground. Those may seem like bold claims, but seeing his performance against the Reaper, I'm not writing this guy off so soon, especially because you know how Izzy struggles against good wrestlers. That was clear when he moved up to light heavyweight to face Jan Blachowicz and got completely manhandled by the guy. Dricus didn't need to show his grappling prowess, but he's a seasoned wrestler, and he's shown that in his past fights. Obviously, things are going to be a lot different if the two men stay on their feet, but the takedown threat from Dricus is always going to be there. Izzy's even admitted that Stillknox got the better of him in sparring. Back in the day, the two men trained together once, and Adesanya recounted how Dricus completely owned him during a grappling exchange. He added that he was the better striker, but Dricus responded to this, claiming they did only a single round of grappling and never even did striking together. The South African said that he understood why the last stylebender had to make it up, because it wouldn't be a good look on him if he only said that he got out-wrestled. Now, this was way back in 2014, and Izzy probably wasn't as well versed in all aspects of MMA, but to be fair, he hasn't shown himself to be a decent grappler in any of his recent fights either. The rivalry with Du Plessis is something that Adesanya needed as well, because there's no one else in the division that he can fight or even wants to. During his time at the top of the table, Izzy's gone through everyone, and there aren't any more contenders left for him to take on. People were talking about a trilogy fight with Whitaker, but that isn't going to happen now after Du Plessis demolished the Reaper. Plus, the last stylebenders defeated Rob twice, so there was no point in a third match. There's Jared Cannonier, who impressed with a win over Marvin Vettori, but Izzy already defeated him before taking up the two fights against Alex Pereira. A third match in the UFC against Pereira would have been interesting, but Dana's made it clear that the Brazilian's going to be fighting at light heavyweight from now on. Of course, there's Sean Strickland, who could have been a potential candidate for the title fight, but Alex ran through him, and you guys can imagine what Izzy would have done to him. Dricus is the only logical choice left for Adesanya. Otherwise, he can think about a move up to 205 pounds himself. So there you have it, folks. From the lack of contenders for the champ to take on at middleweight to getting a chance to settle their feud. That's why Israel Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis needs to happen.